In the final hours of Adolf Hitler's life, as the world crumbled around him, he made one last desperate attempt to erase all traces of his existence. With his mistress, Eva Braun, he burned documents, photos, and anything else that could reveal what happened in the bunker. For decades, the truth about his final moments remained a mystery. But in a stunning twist, 70 years later, a French officer named Raymond Rose uncovered shocking new documents, secret papers that reveal not just the despair of a leader on the brink of defeat, but a betrayal that sealed his fate. These newly discovered documents reveal a lot about Hitler's mindset in his final days and offer an opportunity to understand the atmosphere in the bunker. They also shed light on why Hitler married Eva Braun just 24 hours before his death, and which of his closest companions betrayed him. Most importantly, they explain how the Allied forces came to know that the dead body found was indeed Hitler's. In November 1945, just months after Hitler's death, Commandant Raymond Rose, a French officer, entered the bunker. The bunker had 26 steps leading to a dark, gloomy room where papers were scattered all over the place, along with overturned furniture and candle wax. Rose discovered some documents that provided new insights into Hitler's final days. These documents show that even in his last days, Hitler remained stubbornly determined and tried to find victory even in death. Just 10 days before his death, the dream of Nazi Germany, which Hitler had once envisioned as the world's most powerful empire, was now only a broken dream. Berlin, which had once been the heart of Hitler's power and dreams, had become a pile of rubble. Destruction, fear, and death were everywhere. The Allied forces' bombs rained down, and the Red Army was only 100 kilometers away. Hitler, once a predator, was now hiding in a bunker that was about to be his tomb. This bunker was not a typical shelter. It was built 7 meters underground near Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. Designed by Albert Speer, Hitler's personal architect, it was a strong, bomb-proof structure. Construction began in 1936, but after the Allied bombing raids of 1943 and 1944, it was reinforced and strengthened. The Germans called this bunker the Führer bunker, meaning the leader's bunker. This was where Adolf Hitler spent his last days, hiding from the destruction around him. The atmosphere in the bunker was oppressive, filled with silence, concrete walls, cold, damp air, and darkness. It felt like a maze with narrow hallways and rooms, making it difficult to breathe. Hitler's private space included 3 rooms. One was a meeting room where he met daily with his military officers. Another room was for Eva Braun, and the third was a shared bathroom. The environment in the bunker was depressing and filled with fear. Since the bunker was underground, there was a mechanical ventilation system which constantly made noise. This noise was not just physically uncomfortable, but also mentally torturous for those inside. In the final 10 days of his life, Hitler was not just physically broken, but mentally as well. He had developed Parkinson's disease, a condition that caused his hands to tremble. He often hid his shaking hands in his pockets or positioned them in ways that would not make it obvious. Doctors stated that in his final days, his face looked so pale and exhausted that he appeared to be 10 to 15 years older than his actual age. Officers who met him were shocked by his deteriorating health. Even his personal doctor, Theodore Morell, had to administer glucose and vitamins through injections daily, but nothing could reverse the damage. Hitler had lost control of his hand, which was a clear sign of his deteriorating physical state. The daily routine in the bunker was monotonous and boring. Each morning, military meetings were held in which his generals would inform him about the worsening situation in Berlin. News about losing control of the city frustrated Hitler. His nature was one of distrust, and he was always paranoid about betrayal, even from his most loyal generals. This constant fear of betrayal came true in his final days, when, despite the looming disaster, some of his closest allies let him down. Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime mistress, stood by him during this difficult time. Although they had not officially married yet, she stayed with him in the bunker. Experts believe that Eva's decision to remain with Hitler was likely her personal choice, but also a result of his emotional weakness at the time. Eva was a romantic and emotional woman, and she wanted to stay with Hitler no matter what. Some letters that Eva wrote to her friends have surfaced, revealing her emotional turmoil during this time. In these letters, she expressed her love and fear, as well as her loneliness. She confessed that even though the bunker was terrifying, she was happy because she was with Hitler. The last 10 days in Berlin were filled with bombings. The Allied bombers were dropping bombs on the city day and night, and the Soviet Red Army was closing in. Hitler's forces, though still numbering about 500,000 soldiers and 900 tanks, were weakening rapidly. Berlin was falling, and the German soldiers were losing hope. In the meantime, the radio continued to broadcast Nazi propaganda and music, hiding the reality of the situation. As the Red Army reached the outskirts of Berlin, German forces were defeated. A German soldier returning to Berlin recalled how difficult it was to recognize the city, as it was now a massive heap of rubble. It was clear that Hitler's dream of ruling the world was no longer viable. As the collapse of the Third Reich became inevitable, another drama unfolded. Hermann Göring, a close associate of Hitler and head of the German Air Force, revealed his ambitions to seize power. He sent Hitler a telegram suggesting that if Hitler could no longer make decisions, he should transfer leadership. This infuriated Hitler, who had always been distrustful of others. Hitler responded by removing Göring from all positions of power and declaring him a traitor. Göring was arrested and later sentenced to death, though he committed suicide by taking poison just hours before his execution. Meanwhile, the Red Army continued its advance into Berlin, and Hitler's closest ally, Göring, had betrayed him. This led to an increasingly desperate situation for Hitler, who was forced to make decisions he never thought he would. On April 29, 1945, Hitler gathered those around him and declared that the time had come. At 1 a.m. that night, he married Eva Braun, his longtime mistress, in a brief ceremony with a few officers as witnesses. After the wedding, Hitler instructed his secretary to prepare his will, in which he stated that both he and Eva had chosen death over surrender. They preferred death over the shame of giving up. Sadly, their marriage only lasted 24 hours. On April 30th, 1945, at 3 p.m., Hitler gave his dog, Blondie, cyanide and then went into the room with Eva. Less than a day after their marriage, both of them ended their lives. Hitler shot himself, while Eva took cyanide. The bunker staff was given instructions to dispose of their bodies, and they followed orders by burning their remains. Hitler wanted to leave no trace behind, not even for the Soviet soldiers to display as trophies. He even ordered the destruction of all his documents and photographs before his death. This showed that until the very end, Hitler refused to let himself become prey, even in death. When Soviet soldiers reached the bunker, they found only the burnt remains, but after conducting thorough investigations, including testing Hitler's dental records, they confirmed that the remains were indeed his. Through these events, Hitler's final days were marked by desperation, betrayal, and the collapse of his dreams for the Nazi regime. His last actions, from marrying Eva to taking his own life, reflect the crumbling of everything he had built, as well as the tragic end to a once feared leader.